Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Yuttapadakamalam, Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sahagana Raghunathanvitam, Tam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Sadvadutam, Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padan, Sahagana Lalita, Shri Vishakhanvitamscha, Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta, Swami Miti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Bhagavatam ki jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Haribol.
Haribol Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
End of that paragraph, the page, right?
Yes. Narada replied, yeah, that's where we were.
Okay. Would you like to start reading?
Sure, Mataji. I'll keep it because yesterday there was disturbance. Give me a second, Mataji. I'll just keep my iPad properly. Give me a second. Narada replied, as long as the subtle body exists, the sense of identifying with matter and the desire to enjoy material objects exists. When did this begin? Asked Prachin Bari. That is impossible to estimate. The king thought for a moment and then said, I understand that as long as the subtle body exists, we remain in material life. Yet there are times when we have no conscious awareness, such as in deep sleep. Does that not mean that the subtle body ceases to exist? Narada said, it is not just during deep sleep, but also when one faints, experiences some terrible loss or shock, at the moment of death, or burning with a high fever. At all these times, one loses his self-awareness. This is because the movement of the life air is blocked at such times, which temporarily blocks the subtle body's activities. But it still exists even though there is no indication of its presence. Let me give an example. Consider a baby in the womb or a young child. The mind and senses are undeveloped and cannot exhibit the same range of activity as a youth. The same subtle body is present with all the same desires, but it is not so evident in the younger child. The youth exhibits sex desire and ambition to acquire wealth and fame, which the child does not display. But that does not mean those desires are absent in the child. I find this hard to accept, said the king. How can a baby have sex desire? It is like the moon, replied Narada. After the full moon phase, it wanes and you see it less and less. During the new moon, it becomes invisible. But as we both know, it is present in its entirety throughout all its phases, even when not visible. Prachinbari gazed blankly at Narada. It was a good example, but still it did not quite work for him. One may not be able to see the entire moon at each of its phases, but the whole child was visible and obviously had no sex desire. The king said, It seems clear to me that babies are innocent. How can they have lust? Narada said, One can have desires in the heart which are not manifest because one lacks the appropriate body. A baby does not have developed senses, so he cannot exhibit passionate desires. However, Because in previous lives he engaged in sexual activity, the impressions remain in his heart and will appear at the appropriate time. Let me give you an example of something existing subtly, but not manifesting grossly. When you dream of a garden, it is not actually present, but it appears in your dream because the impressions of a garden exist in your mind from past experience. I see. What exactly is the subtle body? Listen carefully, replied Narada. The subtle body is comprised of the five sense objects, the five sense organs, the five knowledge acquiring senses, and the mind. These 16 energies combine with the spirit soul and are influenced by the three modes of material nature. They stay with the subtle body and expand into different gross bodies life after life. The subtle body makes the spirit soul's material existence possible. Now I'm completely confused, said the king. I thought the five sense objects and the working and knowledge acquiring senses were part of the gross body. Yes, but they exist subtly in the mind also, replied Narada. Try to understand. Due to the subtle body, the spirit soul accepts gross bodies wherein he enjoys or suffers. He sometimes continues to identify with the gross body after it has died. Only when, due to his previous desires and works, he enters a new body does the spirit soul stop identifying with the previous one. Really, said the king, the soul still identifies with his last body even after death? Narada replied, it is like a caterpillar which does not completely let go of one leaf until it is firmly on another. One. Similarly, the mind does not give up its identification with the old body until it has entered a new one. Prachinbari nodded. That explains why ghosts still identify with their dead body. I still do not really understand how the mind is cause of rebirth. It is not because of the acts we perform with our gross body? Yes, said Narada, but you act due to your desires. You want to enjoy food, so you eat. You crave excitement, so you go hunting. You wish to enjoy sex, so you approach a beautiful woman. Action begins in the mind. As long as you desire worldly pleasure, you will engage in material acts and be forced to accept material bodies to receive the reactions. Thus, you remain trapped in the cycle of birth and death. Prachinbari nodded. Narada's instructions made perfect sense. He said, I can now understand why many who attempt renunciation fall down. Their minds are still attracted to sense enjoyment. What chance then do I have? Thinking myself to be a king, I have cultivated so many material desires. These must have already formed my next body. Please tell me, dear Narada, is there any possibility I can attain liberation? From repeated birth and death? Narada placed a hand on Prachinbari's shoulder. Take heart, my dear king. Krishna is the cause of the cosmic manifestations and its maintainer and destroyer. Seek his refuge by always hearing and chanting about him. Then you will begin to see him in everything. Your mind will become attracted to him and you will learn how to engage everything in his service. Prachinbari prostrated himself before Narada. My Lord, by your grace, I now want nothing other than to constantly hear from Krishna's pure devotees and thereby awaken my living service to him. Tears ran down Vidura's cheeks. Narada's teachings were so profound and powerful. He asked Maitreya, what happened next? After instructing Prachinbari in the truths about the soul and Krishna, the best of devotees, the great Saint Narada, left for Siddhaloka. The king must have been dismayed when he left, said Vidura. Narada did invite him to come to.
See, let's pause here. This principle that to make somehow or another, to make arrangements in our life in such a way that we start seeing Krishna in everything. Try to see Krishna's hand everywhere. And then develop attachment for the Lord. That's the purpose of this human life. To become more and more eager to serve the Lord, to become more and more eager for association of devotees. So, what like we may wonder, what does this mean now? When Prachinabar is saying, I now want nothing other than to constantly hear from Krishna's pure devotees and thereby awaken my loving service to him. What does it mean? I don't want anything else. Right? We may wonder what would that mean in our lives. I don't want anything else. Means it doesn't mean we don't make a nice meal and eat, or offer and eat, or we don't go on a vacation, or it's not that we do not have any enjoyment or any fun, but to put Krishna in the center, and to not have any other goals and purposes. mm, I mean, sometimes, we call it smashana vairagya. When we lose something and when we're very disappointed, or at the death of someone, we become detached and we get into this mood. I don't want anything else. I just want Krishna consciousness. We have glimpses. But what Prachina Barhi is having is not just one little glimpse, but he's having a whole complete realization. Obviously, association with Narad Muni, right? Very realistic association here. Not like one of those movie, filmy type of things where the great sage comes in and puts his hand on the head and then everything changes and complete transformation happens, right? In fact, we saw in Dhruva Maharaj's case, although the Lord had his hand on conch on Dhruva Maharaj's head, years later he still had to, or he was overcome by passion and he was trying to kill all this Gandharvas. And remember, right, Dhruva Maharaj, he studied. So the point being, transformation occurs every day, and it's not an overnight change. It's a gradual process, and it's not something, sometimes as we do for diet or some other thing, from today I will not do this and that and this and that, like we make very passionate attempts at giving up something, and we make passionate attempts at making vows that we cannot keep it, right? Promises that we make that are made to break. Not that sort of transformation that we are witnessing here. We are actually witnessing a real change of heart, a real change of priorities, especially for someone who's an emperor. It's a big deal. It's a huge thing. Even in our cases, we are sometimes not willing to give up our little pleasures. Yeah. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, Hari Bol, I wrote in the chat, like love matra sadhu sang sarva siddhi hoy. All good fortune will come automatically.
Absolutely. That's why Vidura is very touched, because Narada is so powerful, so profound. His association is so powerful. Eh?
I was
Also,
thinking about Narad Muni. He's so much absorbed in Krishna, and he know when if he meets somebody, he know how to deliver that, the depth of Krishna conscious to the other person. That was his, personality. Although we read so many, from the previous chapters, how the Dhruva, we started with the Dhruva, and now the Prachinbari, he know exactly where to hit. And the person will transform. Actually, he's not giving himself, he's making that person to ask in that way, then he will, give the answer. This is the quality of,
yeah, being a good listener.
listener. No, actually, he's making a person to, like if somebody comes with the problem, he's making the person with the problem how to, I don't know how to explain. He's
Being a good
making
listener.
He's
Because
making him ask appropriate questions.
to understand
yeah.
the person, to listen. Because if we don't listen, how can we bring anybody from point A to point B? Right? And how to know what is point B for another person if we don't understand the person? Sometimes simple, right? Like Narad Muni speaks a lot, but he's very careful. Listening, I don't just mean the words of Prachina Barhi. He was able to listen to the intentions and attachments of Prachina Barhi. He was able to listen to his readiness, in that way, very deep listening. not just listening to the words, but really like understanding where Prachinabarhi is. So then he could actually make a plan to understand him so well that step by step made Prachinabarhi himself ask those questions. Of
Yeah.
course, the Lord is in the heart, right? The Lord is in the heart of Prachinabarhi, and Lord is in the heart of Narad Muni. The Lord is in everyone's heart, everybody's heart. So sometimes we may wonder, how can I make that person understand A, B, and C? Well, the truth is we cannot, but the Lord can. I mean, it's a magical thing, no, to have the Lord in our heart, and we can communicate. Sometimes, the sixth sense, we're thinking about somebody and that person messages us or something, or we really want somebody to understand something, and no amount of explanation is enough. But then somehow or another, the Lord in the heart of the other person inspires the person, right? All this thing happens to us sometimes. Mystical, right? Mystical, divine intervention sometimes.
Yeah, invisible, this connection which we get,
Okay,
this
ready to
the
write
proper
for
network.
Madhu? Would you like to read a little bit?
Who?
You. Haribol. Anyone wants to read?
Oh, I'm reading. Oh, actually, I'm muted. Vidura said, I thought only perfected soul can attain that exalted planet. Certainly, said Maitreya. That's why, as soon as Narada left, Prachinbari wasted no time. He ordered his ministers to carry on the administration of the state until his sons, the Prachetas, returned. He left instruction for them to protect the citizens, and he departed for Lord Kapila's sacred ashram to perform his bhakti by hearing the Lord's devotional Sankhya philosophy. On arriving there, Prachin Bhari abstained from sense gratification. He dedicated body and mind to hearing and contemplating the Lord's messages. In that very life, Prachin Bhari became purified of all material conceptions and attained a spiritual form similar to Lord Narayana's. Vidura gazed south in the direction of Hastinapur, where Dhritarashtra languished. Like Prachinbari, his brother was fully attached to kingly enjoyment. If only he could save him in the same way that Narada saved Prachinbari. As if driving Vidura's thoughts, Maitreya said, My dear,
Divining Vidura's thoughts.
yeah, as if divining Vidura's thought. Vidura, anyone who either hears Narada's allegory about spiritual existence or who explains it to others will become liberated from the bodily conception of life. His story is pregnant with Krishna's transcendental glories. It purifies the heart and sanctifies the word. It frees one from material attachment, bestows knowledge of the true self, and help the living being awaken his spiritual relationship with Krishna, thus releasing him uh, from the cycle of birth and death. O Vidura, I heard the allegory of King Puranjana from my spiritual master. If one understands its import, he will certainly be delivered from the bodily conception and will clearly understand what happens after death. By studying this narration, one will attain full knowledge of how the soul transmigrate. Chapter 30. The Prachetas meet Lord Narayana. Narayana appears to the Prachetas at the end of their long penance and instruct them to marry and become kings. Vidura leaned back, looked up at the night star, thought of his blind brother drifted through his mind. Maybe he should go back to Hastinapur, convince him to retire and dedicate himself to spiritual practice. If Narada had not rescued Prachinbari after his death, he would have suffered terribly for all the animals he had sacrificed. Dhritarashtra had also committed many sins by pers- persecuting his nephew and their wife. Very likely after his death, he would have to suffer greatly. The old king needed help, but he was materialistic. Would it be wise to gain associate with him? Would this be yet another futile attempt to make him see sense, with the risk of becoming entangled himself? Vidura thought of the Prachetas. They had returned after long penance to take up royal responsibilities. Maybe he could learn something from their example. Vidura said, earlier you told me that Pracheta satisfied Krishna by reciting a prayers Lord Shiva taught them. Please tell me what they achieved as a result of their providential meeting. Maitreya looked at him in surprise. Do you not remember?
Okay,
I have
pause
a
here.
question. I have a
Mm.
question. Like they were saying Hastinapur. Is it after that Hastinapur, like Mahabharata episode?
Okay, so Vidura, yeah, I mean, Vidura is right now in pilgrimage, and all this thing about the Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana has just happened. So this is around the same time, 5,000 years ago. I
Mhm.
mean, I think this is much later than 5,000 years ago because, I mean, meaning first Mahabharata happened after, I think this is after several years like that. Not at the same time because then Prachinabari would also be in the Mahabharata war, but later because,
Mhm.
there is Parikshit and everybody. And so, and also, did you notice this cultural principle? We are, as devotees, as Vaishnavas, the cultural principle is that, hey, very likely after death, he would have to suffer greatly. This is
Mhm.
the culture of Vedic culture, right? Modern culture where they think, hey, death is the end of everything. They don't know that death is the beginning, right? It's a Vedic culture. Modern culture is until death enjoy. अरे कभी भी फांसी चढ़ जाएगी, live your life as you want. That's kind of like a philosophy of the sense enjoyers. So that story comes to my mind. Hmm, Narad Muni, right? Narad Muni, who is the one who gave that benediction? Jivo va marova, na jivo na maro. I don't remember if it was Narad Muni now, but basically the different benedictions for different types of people who lead lives. Mm, for the guy who's a butcher's son, better that he dies because then he will stop killing animals. Similar like Prachinabari's situation here. Although Prachinabari was doing sacrifices, this butcher's son was just doing his kind of duty, but still, it's better that he stops doing that. And then for a rishi, for the king's son, well, better he lives, right? Jivova, meaning better he doesn't die because if he dies, all his punya karma will be finished, and the fellow will be born in some lower class or something. Because as a as a king's son, all he has got is already the best of the karma possible. So if he dies, there's no great thing gonna happen to him, right? It's better that he lives on because if he lives on, he might do some dharma, he might do some service to the sadhus and accumulate some pious activity. So better to he lives on because if he dies, that's it, no chance. And then there is the Rishi Putra, right? Rajaputra is better to live. And then the butcher's putra is better to die. And then there is the Rishi Putra. The Rishi Putra is somebody who's always constantly engaged in mantras and shlokas and spiritual activities, and he's always aware of the philosophy that this body. And so in the Gurukula, very sattvic lifestyle, eating very sattvic food. So if he lives on, he'll continue performing devotional service. He'll continue being wiser, and he will accumulate more and more sukriti. So then, great, he lives on. But if he dies, then he'll get an amazing next birth. He may become a prince, or he may become some other high class, high birth, high family, high education, high good looks, and everything will happen because so far the accumulated karma has given him very good benefits. So that was a blessing, right? To the Muni Putra was Jivova, whether you die or whether you live, it doesn't matter. That's how actually our life should be. Jivova Marova. It shouldn't be like. There was another one. I forgot who that was, and then for that one it was Na Jivo Na Maro. Better you don't die, better you don't live. So I think that was the butcher's son. Yeah, don't die, don't live. Because if you die, then you will face the consequences of your sins, and if you live on, you'll continue making sins like that. So we need to see where we are. Is there any use of us living on, and is there good after we die? That's why devotional service saves us. But I like this cultural concept, right? It's not in the modern education. Unfortunately, we're not taught like that in school. Hey, after death, this will happen. No, nobody's teaching us that stuff, even in Indian schools. Okay, so I think it's time, right? What time is it? Yeah, 5:30. So we can pause here for today. And we have Rasastali Mataji in the room. Yes, Mataji, we missed you yesterday. So if Rasastali Mataji likes, can you do the reading of the affirmations? And then please wait for me, and I'll come back, stop the recording, and start the Vishnu Sahasranam. Thank you. Rasastali Mataji, can you hear us? You're muted if you're talking. I think she's not hearing.
No, she messaged, she's having viral. Throat is not good.
Oh, okay. I don't have the book right now. Anybody has the Japa book, or anybody would like to read any affirmations of the holy name?
I have. Just a minute.
Okay, please do it. I'm coming back.
Okay. I think she read. Affirmation 11. I chant to be accepted by Krishna and to repair my broken relationship with him. Prabhupada gave the following definition of the mantra in 1968. Krishna, please accept me. Please accept me. Interestingly, in a later lecture, he said we have no right to ask Krishna to accept us. We have no right because he left. We left him. We returned our back on him. We committed sinful activities for many, many lifetimes. We become envious of Krishna. We denied him and we minimized him. What right to do we have now to ask him to accept us. Our desire to reconnect with Krishna is our great fortune. As such, we cannot stop ourselves from asking Krishna to accept us. Prabhupada said, we have faith in our Guru Maharaj and we know by his mercy he will petition Krishna and Krishna will accept us. It is powerful to chant in the mood that we have turned our back on Krishna. We have remained separated from him for many, many lifetimes. And now we are asking him, please, although I don't deserve it, I want to reinstate my relationship with you. Please accept me. If we allow ourselves to enter into this mood, it will likely during up emotions like remorse, despair, and lamentation. But these feelings can empower our chanting, feeling guilty for having left Krishna, and feeling the need to reconnect will energize our japa. In this meditation, we can envision the example that Prabhupada gave of the child who has run away from home. Although the parents love him, the child wants independence and therefore leaves home. I like to envision myself as this child coming back years later, as an adult, lifetimes later, to my father Krishna, having suffered much. Realizing my mistake, I am ready to humble plead to Krishna to accept me back. I envision myself knocking on Krishna's door, preparing to ask him to forgive me and accept me, even though I have turned my back on him. I know I don't deserve the relationship, so I can only beg to be accepted. I feel bad, I feel guilty, I feel horrible, yet I need to be accepted, and thus I beg for it. If we bring out these emotions while chanting, we enter a deeply prayerful realm of japa. Hari Bol. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.